Franklin Delano Roosevelt, do solemnly swear.
I, Dwight D. Eisenhower, do solemnly swear.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution.
The Constitution of the United States. So help me God.
I, Mark David Smith, do solemnly swear that this is Contemplating the Constitution broadcast on Wednesday, June 10th. Let it be known to the world and the people thereof that we're going to talk about the Constitution today. Let it be known. Hello, what's up? Hey, what be going down, everybody? It's me and James and Abigail. Look at there. You brought your friends with you. I'm so glad about that.
Yeah, and we have to kind of match you with the we the people. So, hello, because we are people and we the people. How did you get that? How did you get that we the people up there? I don't remember that being up there before. It wasn't. I have my ways. I can't tell you everything.
You've been playing again. James and Abigail O'Hare, the O'Hares. What's up?
Man. Everything is good. Everything's good.
Everything's good.
We're in crazy time, so it's a good time to really talk about contemplating the Constitution, because
really
this was a in-season word show that you wanted to bring forth. So
yeah, in season. We had who was it? Lena Kay was in the chat before the show, and she said, I've been thinking a great deal about the Constitution of the United States of America and noticed it has been eroding by its misuse. And then she added, I have decided to contemplate God's Constitution instead. One day it will stand forever. Yay!
Amen.
Well, it's standing forever now. But yeah, the misuse has been devastating in late, and I think it's trying to lay groundwork. It's almost every day we find something new. That is troubling about, what's happening in the world, the United States being the leader of chaos sometimes. It's so funny when you, I can't tell you how many times I've turned to Adina in the past month and said, sin begets sin. we're just almost getting to the point where we can smile at each other and know that the expression we're thinking is sin begets sin. And it's funny because I remember way back in the early days when I first started serving the Lord, just full on power, passion for the Lord. And I had a pastor that he and I become really good friends, and he was a hellfire and damnation preacher, and I ended up going out on the road with him. But he of all the different sermons that he taught, he did one called Sin Begets Sin. And it's so interesting that one has just stayed with me forever. And it's like, it constantly pops in my head. And I think about the different things that are happening around this country, especially, that one thing leads to another. And of course, that's another expression I've said forever, is one thing leads to another. And it really, I think it's based on sin begets sin. And though it's a negative statement, it's one of those that I hope that, especially with me, I hope that when I think about it, it's like, okay, sin begets sin, so don't do that, because it's not just the sin that you're creating. It's not just the sin that you're doing, but that sin will eventually need to lead to another sin. And you can't, sometimes it's perpetual and it's hard to stop. So just don't enter into that first one. And I think our country and the world, even though for the most part doesn't acknowledge God and the ways of God in the first place, still, if they would recognize that this thing that we do, if we do this, it is perpetually going to lead to worse and worse and worse things. And that's my word for today. It's like,
that's a good word.
Sin begets sin. And so the Torah is helping us to recognize sin. That's always been my deal, is the Torah helps us to recognize sin before we enter into it, allowing us to not enter into it, knowing that it's wrong, and then twist that around to the Constitution. Is that if we learn the laws of our land and abide by those laws, then we know that if we don't violate this law, it won't make us violate other laws. I mean, it's like you violate even a small law and you're confronted with it, then now you have to beget a new sin and lie to cover up the violation of the little law, which means a bigger violation, which leads to a continuous violation. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Y'all know what I'm talking about.
I know, yeah, it's contagious. But but another little segue to that, Mark, is I've noticed that when the sin is begetting sin, when the righteous voice comes forth after that, that's what I'm hearing now. I'm hearing this righteous voice coming forth, and it's like the righteous voice will bring forth that light that makes people stop and think about what they either just heard or what they maybe even consumed. I'm seeing it happening today. I mean, we went through days of seeing the contagious of rioters as opposed to just protesting, protesting peacefully. And you just see that it's amazing how there's truth that takes place during the midst of after the chaos. After the chaos settles, then people were starting to think it through, and so that happens.
If only people would realize that the chaos can happen ahead of time. That's the thing. Our actions. What is our actions going to cause? Sorry, I forgot to set up my fan before we started, and it is the studio. All the electronic equipment and everything in here is now starting to boil. So excuse me. Go ahead. I'm listening. I am listening. Go ahead. So,
yeah, to me, today I just felt like you're saying you're boiling. Well, I was boiling during all this, which was taking place with the riots and everything. But today there was a fresh breeze that came forth. There was this ruach that came forth, and I'm hearing people that are speaking common sense, speaking wisdom, and speaking light. And I'm like, oh, so what it showed me is, when there's like a storm that goes through, we have hurricanes and tornadoes. What do you got to do? You got to let them go through. There's nothing. You just let the storms go through. And then when it's over, then people start picking up the pieces and start, doing what they can do however the condition is around your environment. And that's what I'm seeing happening. And it's so refreshing. I'm like, I knew that you were out there. I'm listening to these voices. I said, I knew you were out there, but I understand. You've got to let the storm go through. But it goes through. But the victory is when the light shines and people start speaking wisdom and common sense. And I that's where I see the hope. That's where I see the manifestation of the hope and the fact that we're not alone in the storm.
Good word. That is a good analogy. I like that a lot. And we have no control over storms, but the one thing we do have control over is our thought pattern and the realization that storm will eventually pass. Even a hurricane, even a tornado, even no matter how bad it is, even a volcano erupting is eventually going to die down and it's going to pass. And so very good, very, very, very good. Good word. Let's bring our other, hey, hello, Sherry. I can't see you.
I can't see her either. I can see her on the monitor, but I can't see her in the picture.
I know. I think she froze.
That's what it is. That's what it is. Okay. So she'll be out of here pretty soon. And she'll be back. All right.
I just thought she had these like this acting ability where she could just, freeze at a moment's notice. It was great.
There she is. She's alive. There she is. Oh, your volume.
Muted. You're muted.
Sherry, we can't hear you.
Speaking of storms, we've had them here, and my internet is spotty once again. It's, but got a praise report.
What's that?
Well, Bob's been looking for sections of tower to put everything up, and he thought he's going to have to drive to Kentucky or, and I looked out in the yard, and there was a car that drove up, and guy got out, and he said, "Oh, well, we have you as a ham operator," and da-da-da-da-da. And the guy had the tower sections that Bob needed, and Bob had something he needed, some kind of antenna pole or something. And so they did kind of a trade-off and, made a deal. And so, the guy was just a few miles away, whereas he thought he's going to have to drive 5 hours one way to get towers, and a lot more than what it was. So,
amen. Thank you, Lord, for providing what is needed, and thank you, Lord, for keeping Sherry and Bob's internet stable for us and for her. Thank you, Lord. We appreciate all that you do. Thank you, Father. All right. Well, you know what? Blessings begets blessings. How about that? Let's not dwell on the negative of sin begets sin and go with blessings beget blessings. So, all right. Well, we've got a really long section this time, and I'm wondering if we'll get through it. If we don't, we'll pick it up next week and go on with that. And I've got another segment that I want to start bringing into the show, and I'm not so sure we'll get to it this show, but eventually I'd like to add a segment to the show called Justice, and from Deuteronomy 16:20, and justice, you shall pursue. And if we get down to 10 to 15 minutes before the end of the show, we may throw that in there from time to time, maybe not every show. Like say, this is a long one. We've been talking about what the legislature requires from our senators and House of Representatives, how the laws are passed, and it's led us into Article 1, Section 8, which is I've been using Annenberg Classroom, and in my research I found another one that I like better, and so I'm gonna this is Annenberg Classroom, and if you'd like, or no, that's Shoop actually. I have started using this instead of Annenberg Classroom because they divide everything up by clause, and I found in my studies that doing it by clause, each article section has specific clauses, and I like doing that. It helps me to understand it. I can take it a little slower and dissect it a little bit better. So if you want to go and follow that, it'll help, because that's going to be my my outline. Basically, I'm using their website as my outline, and so we're going to take, instead of reading the whole Article 1, Section 8, we are going to read it clause by clause. And this literally has to do with now the powers given to Congress by the Constitution. And of course, the very first one is the power to tax. I like what this website says. It says, without the power of tax, they didn't have the power to do much of anything else. So in other words, if they don't go out and get their money one way or the other, they're not going to be able to do anything. So starting with Article 1, Section 8, the text, Clause 1, the Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States. But all duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the United States. Once again, the very first power given to Congress by the Constitution is power to tax. Of course, we all know money is power, and the governmental structure created by the Constitution is no different. Congress, not the president, controls the money. Congress also has the power to levy tariffs, which is taxes on imported goods, but it's not allowed to charge more for imports into one state than into another. The framers of the Constitution probably put the tax power first on the list of Congress's enumerated powers, because they were acutely aware that one of the biggest problems of the old Articles of Confederation was that its version of the Congress did not have the power to tax, and once again, and thus didn't have the power to do much of anything at all. We all complain about taxes. I mean, it's like lawyers. We complain about lawyers. I don't complain about lawyers, but I mean, taxes, it's just too bad. Oh boy, Sherry's, let's see. There we go. She controls her in and out. You can get it. But seriously, we have to have both. We have to have lawyers and we have to have taxes. And so why complain about them? I mean, we have to trust that our government, and the Congress, and the whole governmental structure, we have to be able to trust that they're doing the right thing and taking the right taxes to cover what they need to cover. I still have a problem with our senators and House of Representatives making $184,000 a year and still not showing up for work. Ever since I've learned that, not really happy about that. But okay, so let's take this first one. Who wants to start? Anybody got? Surely we all got something to add.
Well, I just want to say one thing. I mean, I agree with mostly what you said there about taxes. Yeah, mostly. And I understand that you know, in order to you know, have the government work, and you know, taxes need to be appropriated. We understand that, and that's our portion, if you will, in this country, and to create this country to work for the military, for the police, for all the different things that you know, the infrastructure, the highways, the all that kind of stuff that needs to take place. I have no problem with that. No problem with that at all. But what I do have a problem is with the misuse of the taxes. They spend more than they take in, but yet they want to take more in. And they don't want to take more in so that they can balance the budget. They take more in so they can spend more. So they're always spending more than they take in. And what are they using that tax money for? Lena, you know, mentioned about you know, the voice of the unborn. I mean, you know, we see the protesters, rightfully so, you know, protesting injustice for George Floyd. We understand that, and that was horrible. But the signs that we saw on there was not really so much. You know, what George Floyd was, you know, should have been protested about, and the injustice of that officer that took his life. But we see, you know, there are more black babies aborted, and yet we don't see any outcry for that. And the monies from our taxes, unfortunately, we have no say on that, goes toward those clinics, those federally funded abortions, and that's wrong. That's always been wrong, and we should you know, raise our voices to our elected officials, our senators, our congressmen and women, that this is totally wrong, and you know, and things like that. So there are many things that they use the monies for that are just so anti-Torah, that we just need to be voices of righteousness for this day.
Yeah, and it was actually Terry that posted that.
Did I say Terry?
Yeah,
Oh,
no,
did I
it's
say Lena?
Lena. Yeah, that's okay.
Sorry.
And seeing how I opened up my mouth, can I just say one little thing?
Oh, of course, yeah. Sure.
Regarding, you mentioned taxes and lawyers, and in the camp where James is talking about the taxes, we don't have a choice regarding the taxes, but we do have a choice regarding lawyers. And which I'm thankful, you know. I mean, there's lawyers for us personally. I mean, there's some lawyers that are in working with the government that do not have what you'd call justice prevailing in their hearts. They just do it for the sake of turning things around to an evil side. I mean, that's just what they do. I remember a young man that I knew. And he said he was very intelligent, and he had a choice whether he was going to go into law or teaching, educating. And then he started studying about law, about how law, if a lawyer becomes a lawyer, he can use the law to manipulate any way he wants. But so he said, I'm not going into this. He said that the law should be the law, and we should be, you know, bringing forth the law for justice. So anyhow, he saw the injustice in being a lawyer, and he became a teacher. And he's a very well-known teacher in Massachusetts that does great for, especially the Black community. He has helped many people in the Black community who didn't have a sense of thinking they had any worth at all, and he showed them value, and they excelled. But just that to me, the taxes we don't have a choice with. That's why everybody says, why are you living in Massachusetts? Because Massachusetts is Taxachusetts. It is like ridiculous. So anyhow, that was my little 2 cents about the taxes.
That's good. That's good. That's good. And I personally could do an entire show myself, though I don't like doing shows by myself. I'd rather do it with communication or conversing with others, but I could do a whole show about lawyers. One of my all-time, Donna will tell you, most of my TV shows and movies got to do with lawyers and the law, and that and the court systems and things like that. I love that. It's incredible that 3 of the biggest law TV shows of all time have been based in Boston, Massachusetts. 3 of the biggest TV shows ever. And my 3 favorites, I'm still watching a couple of them. It's amazing, but lawyers, I don't want to I'd love to get in. What you said is exactly right. And I can't get into that because we'd be gone. We wouldn't even discuss this. But as far as taxes are concerned, once again, no, we have a say. But let me ask: is it that we get tired of having a say, but yet nothing happening, and so the people in general just get tired of even voicing their opinion because it's like, well, we're supposed to just bring these people in and let them take care of the taxes and vote and do the right things, and so I think it literally is we get passé about it. So anyway, once again, taxes is taxes. Sherry, are you around at all? I see 2 of you down there. Come on in and talk to us about taxes.
Oh my goodness. Don't get me started, but
okay. All right.
This Article 1, Section 8 is like the source of the most important powers of Congress, and it's just like a laundry list. And I think it's interesting. The first one is levying taxes. And I think we all remember that the big cry of the American Revolution was no taxation without representation. Well, now we got representatives, so now they're going to tax us. But the taxes that they collected then were never meant to be used for what, they would never have thought that they would use taxes for all the stuff that they use our tax money for. I mean, it's ridiculous. And it's horrible. Bob says all the time, and when we both agree, we really resent that our tax money is used to kill the unborn. I mean, that Planned Parenthood is a big multi-billion business. What are they doing getting money from the government? That's my issue. They shouldn't be getting any money from the government.
Right.
And the stuff that they get for, and they've gotten to where they use it for everybody but the American people. Our infrastructure is really substandard to the rest of the world. You hear people that travel. That's one of the things that President Trump has brought up. He said, you travel to some of these countries and their infrastructure is wonderful. Ours is not. If we had an EMP, that'd be it. Over here. I mean, look at me trying to stay on here. I mean, just.
Yeah.
Wow, she froze at the right time.
Well, what a demonstration.
That was a demo.
Yeah.
Have a real hard time getting internet. That was a demo. Our phones won't work a lot of times.
Go and tell.
Our telephones. We have to sit out on the front porch, and Charlotte has to run around in her yard like this with it on speaker. AT&T is horrible, but we use AT&T because it's on the river. But I think there's some other providers that have come up. I don't want to be a commercial for anybody, but other providers that have come up that are. My son and son-in-law and daughter have an AT&T thingy in their yard, and they can't get AT&T. Now that's pretty sad. So that has nothing to do with taxes. That's just my rant for the day. But you know, I don't mind paying taxes if they're using it for the American people and for America, you know, and I don't even mind giving to places that really need help. But we've got some rascals up there and some personal interest groups that have hijacked our money that we're paying in. And that's just wrong. You know, I don't want to be misunderstood, but there are a lot of children here, right here in America, that don't have enough to eat. There's a lot of here in America that don't have what they need.
Sure.
But they're using our tax money and sending a lot of it overseas, which I don't, like I said, I don't mind helping anybody. But I mean, and I don't want us to be selfish, because the American people are among the most generous people on the face of the earth, really and truly. And we're known for that. But, you know, I think, you know, kind of a lot of the stuff now it's just really got kind of turned around and hijacked. So, but this clause does give them the power to do that. It just doesn't give the people the power to say where that money goes. That's what I don't like about it. They should have written that in there somewhere.
Well, yeah, no, you're right. It doesn't say that. We do have the right to speak against it and get a hold of our congressmen and senators and stuff like that. But like I say, I just wonder how many times people have just backed off because I've done it already many times, or I've heard of people doing it so many times and nothing ever happens anyway. So why even do it? And I don't know. Anyway. All right. Let's go on to clause 2. The Congress shall have the power to borrow money on the credit of the United States. Congress is allowed to go into debt to pay for government programs and services. Deficit spending by the government was fairly rare in peacetime through much of American history, but has been quite common in recent decades. Does anybody know what our government deficit is right now?
I don't know the deficit, but the national debt is 25 trillion.
Debt, yeah.
25 trillion is the national debt. The deficit is a yearly thing. The national debt is cumulative.
Yeah.
So 25 trillion.
You want to hear something that will scare you? We don't have 25 trillion in cash. If all the cash in the United States, all the cash that we have out there, we wouldn't have.
Well,
and the money we have is what's called fiat money. It's called fiat money. It's not backed by anything. It was tied to gold until it broke the gold standard.
Yeah. It's real hard to follow you. Man, you got some great information, but it's so hard to follow you. So who do we owe?
Well, see, being in banking, you know, the best person to listen to about this is Norm Franz, if you can hear me. But
yeah. So who do we owe money to? $25 trillion. Who do we owe that to? You know that?
The Federal Reserve. Do you know?
I know.
The Federal Reserve, they print the money. They loan the United States money. The United States pays them interest on the money that they borrow. But you can't find out who the owners of the Federal Reserve are. I mean, it's a really, you start opening up that and see, what was it? I think Andrew Jackson, he said the best thing he ever did was defeat them having a central banking system in the United States. Well, they got it passed in the 20s. Yeah, right after they got it passed, a few years, we had the Great Depression. Because the central banking system, see, what people don't realize is if you have $100,000 in the bank, they only have to keep $10,000 cash in the bank. They loan out $90,000. that person puts it in their bank account. They only have to keep $9,000. So they loan out $81,000. By the time it's all said and done, they've loaned out over $1 million on that initial deposit of $100,000, and they don't even have the money. That's what happened in the 2018 cascade of things. See, it's okay if everybody doesn't want their money all at one time. But see, that's what happened when this person defaulted. It was like just a row of dominoes because nobody had the money. They only had to have 10% of the money. And this FDIC thing is kind of a joke, because if you read it, unless they've changed it the last time I looked at it, that they, oh, we guarantee your money. Well, they guarantee your money if it's sneaky-fied how they do it. You're only guaranteed so much, but there's something in there. If it's not an interest-bearing account, and an interest-bearing account can be paid so much over time, you don't get it all at one whack. Well, guess what? Even your checking accounts now are an interest-bearing account. So, I mean, there's a lot about our banking system that is really sneaky-fied and scary, because we are teetering on the brink of a total economic collapse worldwide. I mean, we saw what happened what happened in 2008, and that was very interesting, because that took place at the time of Sukkot. Everybody in the world was shaken with fear because everything was falling.
Yeah. All right. She makes some incredible points there, and it is the way that our system does work. And once again, it's like taxes. We can complain all we want, but we just have to trust that the people that are in the office that are handling all these different things are, what are you going to do? We're in debt. My family, my wife and I have not been in personal debt at all for any reason whatsoever at all for almost 6 years now. And we just literally do not have personal debt, and we won't allow ourselves to go in debt. There are things we need. We need another car. We need, different things, but we do fine without getting ourselves in debt. We live on a very modest means, and we're okay, so I guess does it mean that our government thinks that we need to be the world power, and if we don't make ourselves look like we have money, then we aren't the world power? Or I don't know. Why are we $25 trillion in debt? Did it get out of control and somebody decided not to take control of it? I have questions. I don't know. So
they want to break the back of the United States so they can bring in the New World Order. That's what it's about, is that they want to break our economy. And we're looking at a socialism coming in, that if you do everything just right and follow them, they'll let you live in your house, they'll let you stay on your land, da-da-da-da-da. But if you're and they'll pay off your student loans, all that kind of stuff. So we're looking at, they can control people that are in debt. If you're out of the system, then you'll be able to escape if you're not in debt. Yeah. But if you're in debt, they're going to clamp down at point in time. And we've seen what they could do with this COVID-19. It's all geared to bring in the man of lawlessness. That's what we're looking at.
Yeah.
That's another whole show.
I can't respond to stuff like that. I just say, I hear all of this all the time, and I can't respond to it because I don't know. So James Abigail, what do you have to add, subtract, or divide from that, or whatever you want to say on this?
No, I mean, I agree with the fact that we're in a battle, and we've always been in a battle. But I think if people started looking at, I mean, James and I watched that number go up as far as, I mean, every time we look at that number that's showing, but we start to think about the various administrations that were, were in there, and who people voted certain administrations in there. And it just depends on who's ruling the roost. And the major question is, who's going to rule the world? That's the whole question. Who's going to rule the world? And that's the battle among mankind as far as bribes and that sort of thing. We see that all the time. And we see that, for example, in the President Trump's administration, he used a lot of money to build up the military again, because the military had been robbed from having what they needed to defend this country. Now, whether we like it or not, countries have borders and countries need military. We need military. It's just part of, because there's an enemy. It's scriptural. We're not wrestling against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and rulers of darkness who are trying to raise their ugly head and destroy mankind, righteousness and whatnot. So to make a long story short, a lot of this right here, President Trump had to build up the military again. There were certain things he had to build up because, as he said, when he took office, the shelves were bare. There was nothing there. They had no defense whatsoever. And it was weak. And as Shelley mentioned, Sherry, I'm sorry. I saw Shelley yesterday, Sherry. I saw my friend Shelley yesterday. So
we know you're talking about.
I saw all the people I used to work with, and I was cleaning up my office, but that's another story for another day. But so forgive me. Shelley was there, and I was saying, Shelley, I love you. Mm-hmm. Sherry, I love you. But but as you were saying,
I love you, and it's okay. I answer whatever. I know who you meant.
I know you do, sweetheart. But I know, believe me, you are not Shelley. You are Sherry, without a doubt. I love both of you, but you're both very different, and I love you. But here's the deal: was you said that United States of America has had a habit of giving, and giving to other countries. And so the administration before this, actually 4 administrations before this, were giving to other countries, and yet we were not receiving. We were not being reciprocated. We were giving, but United States of America was lacking. And we, the people, and that's why, again, I applaud you, Mark, for bringing this out, because there's a lot of we, the people, that are ignorant to how the United States of America was set up to run. A lot of people are ignorant, and they're ignorant as to why are you voting for somebody because he's an elk? I'll vote for an elk because he's an elk. That's what one of my English teachers once said. Don't vote for someone because they're an elk. Find out what's behind that elk, and that stuck with me. That stuck with me. He said, he would say, "Do your due diligence." And I'm in high school, and he's telling me this, and that stuck to me. Like, yes. In other words, search out what this person stands for.
Right?
Why are they running for office? Are they on your side? Are they on America's side? Are they on the Constitution side? Do they have a track record, or are they just speaking blah blah blah, and there's no track record? Words, show me your action, show me the beef. Where's the beef? That I love that lady. Show me the beef. So that commercial. But the bottom line is, this is so needed. This is not being this is not being taught to people, and so they'll vote for somebody because of whatever reason they vote for them.
Right.
And we're hearing it today. There's a lot of manipulation of who to vote for and why to vote for them. And it's the wrong reason. Let me just say it. Yeah. We need to do our due diligence. And that's what we're doing. So all this money that will just giving. And I'm a giver. I'm not against giving. But you have to ask yourself, who am I giving it to? What's the purpose? And how is this benefiting the United States of America, number one, because that's where we're living. This is our refuge. And is it actually benefiting the other countries to be in unity with us? And the truth of the matter is, it didn't repair the breach given to all these countries. It actually, we have enemies now. There's enemies in all these continents that want to destroy us. They've taken from us. They've taken money. They've taken the intellect that has come through the various means of electronics and all the various things that we've discovered. They've robbed us of what we have given them, and they're using it against us. So are we really using wisdom? Are we using wisdom? I don't mind giving, but be my friend. Be in unity with me. Don't be my enemy.
Right.
Well, the problem is
giving is a godly principle. It's the getting back that is not there. Go ahead, James. Sorry.
No, I'm just saying that I mean, one of the reasons, the biggest reasons I think that we give to other nations is to create some sort of stability, so that there's no issues. I mean, keeping the balance of power, if you will, within the regions, like especially the Middle East, where you have this small little state of the size of New Jersey, Israel, surrounded by 22 Arab nations, not to mention the non-Islamic or the non-Arab Islamic nations that are around them too, and so you have all that, but the $25 trillion debt is an issue. No one ever talks about it unless it's maybe a little bit on election time, but there's no real solutions to it. I mean, here we have 25 trillion in debt now, and it just went up, in the last 30 days by 3 trillion because of the stimulus, because of shutting down the economy. So that's weird. And it was 22 trillion. Now it's up to 25 trillion. But contrast that with China. China has zero debt. They hold a lot of our debt because they've bought the bonds and all that kind of stuff that is what creates the debt. How the Fed, you're talking about the Federal Reserve, that's how they raise the money, basically, is by selling bonds. And China, anybody can buy them, which is unfortunate, but should be held in America. But China has bought a lot of those bonds and has a lot of that over our heads. Could call it any time. I mean, we don't even pay the interest on the full interest on the national debt. That's why it keeps on going up and up and up, because it's just I look at the clock. If you ever watch that debt clock,
You don't like it.
I don't like it. But in 5 seconds, that clock has gone up more money to the national debt than I'll ever make in my lifetime. I mean, that's weird. That is strange. That is wicked. I mean, the Bible, and we just
wicked.
We just read that the Father will find favor on the nation, and we will be a borrower and not, a lender, not a borrower. But
right.
The wicked nation becomes a borrower, right. And that's what we're becoming.
Wow.
Borrow everything.
Wow.
And it's just like, how long can we sustain this? So what Sherry was saying earlier, and Abigail too, is that this kind of sustaining is bringing forth, getting closer and closer to the end, the man of lawlessness, the new world order, which that's been going on a long time, but I think it really started getting prominence, which is kind of interesting, with George Herbert Walker Bush, and he was kind of vocal about it, and he was part of called the deep state. Everyone calls it a deep state. He was part of that deep state with the Council of Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission, which is like a government within a government, and they're the ones that really make the plays a lot of times and just use the Congress people and the president to their whim, and that's why you have these long time people, career politicians, or career, not even politicians, career government people in there, and they're there for 40, 50, 60 years or whatever it is, and it's very difficult to stop them. President Trump came in with draining the swamp, and he's done an okay job, but it's hard to drain the swamp. Because why? Because we are in an entitlement society, and everything is, you listen to the Democrats, it's, we'll pay your, as Sherry said, we'll pay your student loans, we'll pay your debt, we'll pay you this, we'll give you free housing, we'll give you free healthcare, we'll give you free. But that's only because they want power. And if they can sustain and have power, that's what they're looking for. And it's all about power. It's all about the power grab. We saw our headline, drunk with power. Well, they are drunk with power. And this is both sides, not just the Democrats, although it may tend to be a little bit more on the Democrats, but they are power drunk. And that's every time you hear this thing about defunding the police or reforming this or doing this or whatever it is, it's all a power grab, because the Bernie Sanders, the AOCs, the whoever, the Pelosi's and all these people, they kneeling. I mean, are we supposed to be kneeling before people, before men? What is that all about? But it's more than just the kneeling. It's the power grab that they're looking for. They're the people in power. They want more of it. So.
And if I may just be a dovetail to this, it's called atrophy. We become stronger when we work together in unity. When we're in unity, we get stronger. But when you give people entitlements and enable them without any type of there's no strength in what they're doing, you are what you're doing is you're creating atrophy. And my mother used to talk about this all the time. My mother really knew about the trilateral. She actually educated James and me on it. She really knew about the deep state and the swamp. And she explained it. She said, the United States of America was built on building. We are builders. And we are builders, and we are pioneers, and we are like what the Pilgrims did, and people can, I don't throw the Pilgrims under the bus. I don't do it. There's a lot of talk about all that goes on, but the bottom line is this, and this is what's sad, but things are starting to turn around a little bit. We look at all the people that are homeless, the people that are, and James talk about bending the knee. That's idolatry. You bend the knee to a king, a human king, and then you should, that's part of the custom, if you will, and you bow before our maker, the creator of heaven and earth, Yeshua HaMashiach, our Redeemer. That's who we bow before.
Amen.
Actually, my father told me, don't even bow before the king. Don't bow before a man. You bow before the king. You bow before the King of Kings. But what we're doing now is we're surrendering to idolatry. We're surrendering to witchcraft.
Sure.
We're surrendering to the arm of the flesh. Jeremiah said, don't put your trust in the arm of the flesh. Put your trust in the creator of heaven and earth. And we're seeing gradually this here has happened. It's like that frog you put in the water, and it's not hot water. It's cool water. And then you keep turning the heat up. So the frog just stays there and says, oh, this is comfortable. Oh, this is cool. And before you know it, you're cooked.
Right. So here's my, first of all, every one of these, because they are just clauses based on the very first words, the Congress shall have the power, meaning that they have control, and shall be the ones that are in the control. Even the president, even as it said, not the president controls the money. and they shall have the power. I want a couple of questions. First of all, backing up to China, and it's interesting that when I asked the question earlier, so who do we owe the 25 trillion to? In my brain, the only word in there was China, because I do know for many years, as long as I can remember even being interested in this subject, I knew that China already like own our parks, our national parks, and own a lot of other things that belong to the United States, and we have debt to them, and have always known that they could just at any time say, okay, we want our money back. Second question is, I wonder, has China ever been in debt? I mean, they have the resources in their land to not be in debt. I mean, through all of time. But the United States has too. We've always had the resources to maintain on our own without having to be in debt to countries or states or anybody outside of our own land. We, from way I see it, our resource, even oil, we don't need to be in debt. We don't need to have resources based on other countries. I would like to take a time machine, go back, and be the person to make the decision on clause number 2 and say, no, we're going to write it, the Congress shall have the power to not borrow money on the credit of the United States. Obviously, by the wording of the credit of the United States, they already knew we had the resources to maintain our country without going anywhere. So I would really love to have been sitting in the room behind you guys when they were discussing this particular clause and hear the arguments presented by the people that made the decision to go in debt from that second on. All of a sudden, parenthetically, it pops into my head, well, they probably were already in debt when they did this, so they had to write that in there. But you understand what I'm saying. I want to hypothetically understand what was going through your minds, and did you even fathom what $25 trillion was? I mean, if somebody could have just stood up while they were discussing this clause, if one person would have stood up and said, do any of you know what 25 trillion means? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
None of them. They would have all had that look on their face. 25 what? I've never even heard the word trillion at that time. I guarantee you not one of them had ever even heard that word. And so if you'd have been able to say, hey, 200 years from now, she said 200 and some years from now, you're going to know what 25 trillion is. So you see what I'm saying? Would they have worded it that way? So anyway, that's my hypothetical. I don't know. What, any thoughts on that? What would they? What do you think?
I think, one of the biggest things.
Can we even think of that? Go ahead.
Yeah, one of the biggest things, that began here in Boston, during the colonial days, was that taxation without representation, and it was such a small thing in the terms of the Tea Party that took place. I think it was like 1 penny or something, equated to 1 penny per box, in those boxes, something like that. It was ridiculously small. but yet they understood the process of tyranny through taxation with unrepresentation. Now we have representation, as Sherry mentioned earlier, and there's something that's in the first clause. And I just want to point it out again. It's the reason that they have the ability to lay and collect taxes, the duties and all that kind of stuff, excise and all that kind of stuff. It says for the common defense, which now that's pretty understandable what the common defense is, and general welfare. The general welfare is the key, because what does that mean? Is that totally up for interpretation? I mean, what my definition of general welfare is different than yours, and different than Abigail's, and different than Elizabeth Warren and Bella Pelosi and Pencil Neck and all these others. Even what's his name, Mitch McConnell. What does that all mean? So and there's two parts of the deficit. The national debt is the debt that's held by outside of government. Those are those bonds and securities that are sold, and that's 19 trillion. The rest of it is held by the federal government, and most of it being Social Security, because you have that Social Security trust. Now, all that money that is taken out weekly or bi-weekly, whenever people get paid, though you can't say no to it. It comes out automatically for the Social Security and Medicare and all this kind of stuff. What was I going to say? It has been decimated. I mean, they've taken that money and saying that, oh, this is a nice little slush fund. We'll put IOUs back in the box. I owe you another $1 trillion. I owe you another $3 trillion, whatever it may be. So much now that they're talking about that this Social Security, is going to be decimated and broke by the year 2033 or something like that, or whatever it is. And it's like, really, the good faith of the American people have put in this thing for years and years and years and years, 40, 50, 20, 30, whatever it may be. And now, because of their stupidity and their greed and the people's entitlements that people are looking at, we have another 6 trillion on top of the deficit to make it up to 25 trillion now. It's kind of like we have been duped as American people. Tip O'Neill, who used to be the Speaker of the House here from came out of Boston, he always said all politics are local. Even the federal government, all politics are local, because those are local people that we elect to send to Washington year by year, every 2 years for Congress, every 6 years for senators, every 4 years for president. But the Congress and Senate, they're local, and those are the representatives that we have that are supposed to do our bidding. But yet we keep, and we see them, what they do. We see what they do, but yet, and we complain about it. I mean, the Congress has the lowest poll rating of everybody. They're like 13%, 14%, whatever it is.
I wonder why.
Yeah, exactly. But yet the stupidity of the American people, and I use this in a general term, but the stupidity, like Massachusetts has all the Congress people, which I think there's 10 right now, all are Democrats. The 2 senators, Democrats. And so you have, why do we keep on doing this? Why do we, and there's other states that do the same thing. So pretty much there's always red states and blue states, and then maybe a few purple states mixed in. But I can't remember the last time. I think it was Francis Sargent or something. Mm-hmm. Senator Sargent was I think it was a senator and a Republican. I think he was, and that was like in the 70s. So we haven't had and then we had a fluke Scott Brown, but that was a special election, caught the Democrats sleeping, and he won and was in there for 3 years or whatever, but then got blasted by Professor Pocahontas. You know, and you know, I mean, a professor. Get this: Elizabeth Warren, a Harvard professor, teaching one class, getting $400,000 a year. Really? But
yeah, really.
She claimed that she was a Native American,
and that's how she got the
and
position.
that's how she got the position.
That's how she got the position.
And we elect her as senator.
We don't.
No, we don't.
don't.
I mean, but you know, but the stupidity of Massachusetts that elect these people year after year, election after election. It's like, please, let's stop the madness. Let's have term limits.
And then we vote for somebody who's our governor, and he's a Republican.
We didn't vote for him.
No, but we the people here in the United States of America.
And he's a Republican, but he's a rhino.
But he's a rhino.
And he's
so
pro
don't vote for an
abortion.
elk because he's an elk.
Right.
You don't know what's going on with him.
Yeah.
You know, it's really lawlessness.
Exactly.
It really is. The people that are running the United States of America, not all of them. There are some righteous people there, but the people, for the most part, that are running it are just so greedy. They're in for it for their own.
Yeah. Well, that's the definition of insanity, is doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, voting for the same people over and over and over again, and expecting a different result. It won't happen. It just won't happen.
Yeah.
That's insanity. It's crazy.
Thank you, Senator O'Hare. We appreciate your input on that. I really do. Sherry, want to add to any of this?
Yeah, you mentioned that China owning our parks and stuff. Can you hear me?
Yes.
China owning our parks. Well, I learned this from Bob. There's a lot out there and stuff that I never knew, because it's kind of a hidden industry all out in front of you. But they have what they call the Jones Act. And the Jones Act says that Americans, that vessels on our inland rivers and between domestic ports have to be owned, built, and crewed by Americans. It cannot be owned by a foreign country. And Japan actually came in and bought one of the riverboat companies. And the other companies came up and said, you can't do that. That's the Jones Act. And they had to sell it. They could not own it, because you do not want some foreign country running our inland rivers. They could cut this nation up into little bitty slices if they put their troop stuff on it. So that was, and Bob says they have tried to repeal that act, but so far it's standing. So they've had, like, they wanted to bring up people from Argentina to run our river boats, and they're like, you can't do it. That's where what they call the NOVA pilots, New Orleans to Baton Rouge pilots, they have to be on the foreign ships that are coming to our port and bring them up through, what is it, the canals, dear? Up from
New Orleans to Baton Rouge.
Up from New Orleans to Baton Rouge on those waterways, because they're our inland waterways, and they cannot have a foreigner running our inland waterways. So they have to be on that ship directing them through the waterways. I mean, so that's been something that's really protected our country, is that Jones Act. And
in the shipyard.
And he said the shipyards cannot be foreign owned either. Our ports cannot be foreign owned.
Wow. Very interesting. Hi, Bob. Nice to hear from you.
Hello.
You can't see you over there.
I'll say that too.
He's
Hi,
very
Bob.
that way.
Yeah.
Hey, Bob.
And I'll even say that backwards.
Damn.
Hi, Bob.
Hey, Bob.
Howdy.
Let me put the camera.
But they call those cabotage laws, and almost every country in the world has that protect their own citizens and their own country from being having foreign powers and owning their shipyards and transportation vessels and all that, which plays a big role in the country. High percentage of all petroleum moves by the rivers and canals in this country. A lot of grain, rocks, gravel, cement, all kinds of things that are vital to a country. And then, this isn't peculiar just to the United States, but countries worldwide. And a lot of our politicians have tried to do away with the Jones Act and open us up to foreign workers and foreign companies buying into our infrastructure, I guess you would say.
Right.
But that's, so far they haven't been successful, but they did want to bring in people from South America and from Mexico to crew our vessels operating inland, and even tried it a time or two, and they got blocked pretty quickly.
How interesting. Very good. Thanks for sharing.
You can imagine you can imagine if they brought over a bunch of people from Russia and put them on our inland boats. Well, hello, or some other country, not just Russia, but I guess I'm picking on them, or China, Yeah. So right. I wouldn't want it. And I think there's more cargo that moves by river than moves by rail. A lot of people don't know that. How many, like 3 or 4 football fields of cargo they'll move in front of them? I mean, the guys on what they call blue water, the seagoing captains, they said they couldn't believe how skilled those guys out there have to be to move that cargo, because it's like moving, I don't know what between, he says, like driving in a little ditch. Even though our rivers are big, they're seeing, what is it, a mile out or more to the head of the tow.
Yeah. A lot of tows are 7 lengths, sometimes 8 lengths. A barge is 200 feet, so it's 1,600 foot of tow in front of you. And the bigger boats are 200 feet long and 54 feet wide, most of them. So basically, you're well over a quarter of a mile long.
Wow.
And the larger tows carrying up to 49, 56 barges, and you've got about 10 acres of barges in front of you. And smaller tows can be the equivalent of 5 or 6 acres of barges. A lot of them loaded to 11.5, 12-foot draft. So it's moving.
So you wouldn't want somebody with something that's explosive from a foreign country running that up and down your rivers.
Well, and we move a lot of salt from the salt mines in Louisiana and all up to the north to rust people's cars out in the winter, put on their roads. And a lot of fertilizer goes to the farmers, lots of fertilizer. And a lot of the fertilizers, you just mix diesel fuel with it, and it makes a very high explosive.
You're right.
When you've got 1,600 to 2,000 tons of that per barge in front of you, and possibly 50 or 60 barges, and all you do is add a little bit of diesel fuel, you could take out some bridges, major bridges. There's all kinds of things you could.
They have to have all kinds of FBI clearances, and I mean, the FBI knows all of us at our house very well. You've got to have all kinds of credentials.
Well, but post 9/11, we've got a lot of security.
Froze.
Yep, they froze.
Well, we need to wind it up anyway. I need to go, and we're at the top of the hour. So I really want to thank Sherry and Bob for sharing that. That was some interesting information I did not know does play into all this, because having foreign powers or foreign countries and foreign vessels being able to regulate those things and not know our laws and come in here and not knowing the agenda that they have. I see it. So, but we have to go. It's a minute before the top of the hour, and I knew we weren't going to get very long. But so we'll head on into Clause 3 of Article 1, Section 8 next week, and you might see my name next week. I'm going to bring up a topic. We may only spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes talking about it, but I want you to think this next week about the phrase, "The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few," or the one. And we'll talk about that. I'm going to bring a new segment in that hopefully we won't spend more than 10 minutes on, but there's just I would like for you to think about that this next week, and we'll talk about it when we come back. Sherry, we need to go. I want to thank you for coming on and sharing your insight. It's always great, always good. So thank you for joining us.
All of this is a very interesting conversation with everyone.
Yep. It's always good, man. I don't think I've learned more from any other show that I listen to on the network than this one. I listen to you guys and learn a lot of secular stuff anyway. But hey, I can apply it to my godly life big time. So Senator and Mrs. O'Hare, we really appreciate your input and your wisdom. I really do always think of the two. I think of the two of you, and the word wisdom pops up, and I appreciate that so much. You guys are the best. So, but I really got to go, and I got to wind it off. So thank you guys so much once again for your input, and we'll see you all next week. I guess we can't hug and kiss anymore. So I like what Sherry said on the next chapter last week is we understand social distancing. Maybe we should understand social media distancing a little bit more.
I agree. Totally agree.
All right. God bless everybody. We'll see you next week for sure. God bless.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.
I, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, do solemnly swear.
I, Dwight D. Eisenhower, do solemnly swear. I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States. So help me God.